So on behalf of Mass CEC and communities that may be considering running in a Heat Smart or Solarize campaign in the future, I want to thank you for participating today in this interview. Our goal today is to capture your experiences and the knowledge you gained from running your campaign so that it can be passed on to other communities in Mass. For our viewers today that may be less familiar with Solarize and Heat Smart, these programs seek to increase the adoption of small-scale solar electricity and clean heating and cooling technologies in participating communities, mainly through grassroots educational campaigns that are driven by local volunteers. And these community-led campaigns really help simplify the process of installing clean energy systems by pre-vetting an installer and offering transparent pricing for homeowners. So now I'll quickly introduce myself. My name is Charlotte Fall, and I'm the Community Clean Energy Fellow at Mass CEC, helping to develop the Solarize and Heat Smart Toolkit. I'm joined today by Mary Mangan, who was a solar coach for Solarize Somerville in 2016. So let's get started. Could you quickly introduce yourself and briefly explain your role, responsibility as a solar coach in Somerville's Solarize campaign?
As you said, Mary Mangan is my name, but I actually have been a resident of Somerville for 20 years, so I knew the community very well. And I know the kinds of housing that's available here in Somerville, and I knew something about the city operations, which helped me to work on this program, I think.
And now could you briefly explain some of the responsibilities you had as a solar coach?
Sure. So although the city had initiated it, of course, they were looking for someone who wanted to help out with some of the outreach and some of the information and educational materials and things like that. And so I came on at that point. I had actually installed solar on my home already, and it's a two-family house in Somerville, which is crucial to our story as we go forward. And so I understood how that process would work. I was able to talk people through all of it, from having someone in your house to assess the capacity of your house, to what your roof needs were, to setting it up for two units in a two-family house. So I was able to bring that kind of knowledge into the city's process.
So what were two strategies for marketing and outreach that you think were the most effective for your community?
For our community, some of the most active outreach campaigns that we did included, as I mentioned before, Somerville has all these festivals. So we were always going to festivals. We were always in front of people. So even if they didn't talk to us at every event, they were aware that the campaign was running. They could go home and they could look it up on our website and they could learn more about it. And because it had the backing of the city, we had letters that came out from the mayor, which was important. It came out in official city stationery, and it was something that people would read. So that was really helpful. We also had access to the city's communication channels. Like one of the things that was really weirdly effective was in their people's water bills, we included a flyer about the campaign. And it's something that people open, they read, and it's a time that they're thinking about resources and things like that too. So I think that was one of the more surprising things that I wouldn't have thought would work that well. But again, because it had the city's backing, because people had confidence that it was at least reviewed in some way with this RFP process, we could explain that to them, for example. It gave people confidence that that was something that they would be interested in learning more about. And so then they would come to us and find out more information. And we prepared materials in multiple languages too. That's one of the support features that the city brought to us as well. So we were able to do many of our flyers and events in multiple languages. So that was really nice. And so when we had some kinds of events, for example, we would want to have additional materials on things that renters could do, for example, like information about home energy audits and things like that people could also be involved with. So we wanted to be broad and reach a lot of different people with this campaign.
Were there any other great opportunities or events during the campaign that helped you meet your goals?
One of the things I think was helpful to us, and which might be available to some communities, was our city's cable access channel. Because not everyone can go to the events that we held, even though they were really informative and useful events with the details about how the program worked and the technical details about the solar panels and things like that, we actually had a video made of that was available to anyone. So it went beyond the people in the room. It reached beyond that, and that was really useful. And I think these kinds of YouTube recordings would really work well for people in pandemic times as well.
So your team chose to facilitate their own installer selection process independent of Mass CEC. And can you tell me a little bit about how you ran the installer selection process?
The decision on the city of Somerville side was that we have the capacity to do the RFP process, and we had the right people who would come to the table to evaluate the proposals. And there was already a process in place that the city was quite comfortable with, so it didn't require a whole new layer of people coming in to help. And I can see in other communities it might be the right thing to do it with other assistants, but in our case that was all set. So we chose to do it that way, and we had a really great process. So the city folks who do the administrative kinds of things of issuing the RFP, all of that stuff, that was all handled really, really professionally and properly. And we had people, as I mentioned before, we had the environmental sustainability office involved. We had the housing office involved. There was me as a volunteer from the community. We had another volunteer from the community who was on the city's climate commission, a volunteer board of climate commissioners who are interested in this process. We also had someone from the inspectional services division, which is something that I wouldn't have thought of as an important piece of this as we went forward, but it was really great having that person in the room, because they were able to explain why the inspection process had to occur in such a way, and they wanted to have a voice in choosing an installer who respected the inspectional services division to make sure everything was installed properly and safely, and also the safety of the workers on the roof as well. That's something that I hadn't thought through in the past. Like, it's just something wasn't part of my experience, but I really felt good as we brought that whole team together, evaluated these proposals. People asked all kinds of questions from residents' perspective, but also from technical perspectives, and I thought it was a really nice way to organize.
When you released your RFP for the installers, if you included any criteria about having experience dealing with two-family households?
We were definitely interested in an installer who understood our housing stock here. Was definitely an issue in several ways, actually. So not only is the most common house type in Somerville a two-family house, we also have a lot of triple deckers. A lot of people know the Boston 3-decker. We got those. And so that was another issue that our installer had to be prepared for. So when we were looking at these installers, we made all of these things very clear, that it had to be someone who was comfortable in these kinds of situations, all of those situations, multifamilies, as well as these strange roofing situations too. So, and that was really important going forward. And because I understood as a two-family homeowner how the credits are assessed and how to apply credits to the other person's bill, that gave me a lot of opportunity to just show people my electric bill. Here's my electric bill that says 0, and here's where I issue the credits to the other home as well, the other unit in our house. And people were able to grasp that because of my experience, but it was definitely something that the installer had to be aware of and had to know that a lot of people were going to be coming with this situation. So we specified that in our RFP process.
Do you have any tips for working with a municipality for communities that may decide to run the installer RFP on their own?
They definitely involve the people who are going to be inspecting the arrays. And I think that was a really key feature of the way that our group did it, because one of the things in Somerville is they're very serious about the inspections, and that could be a barrier. And homeowners had confidence that because we'd already worked with the folks who do the inspections, that process was going to be okay. And there was already a pipeline of, if there were any kinds of issues, the inspection services folks understood what we were doing and could work with the selected installer as well. So that was really, really beneficial, I think, for our community, for everyone's comfort all around.
So what were some of the biggest challenges you faced while running your Solarize campaign?
Possibly a barrier that other communities will find is that we had a lot of people who were interested, but they were in condo situations. So they were legally either not able to access the roof, or they had to get approval from the condo board to do this, or they couldn't get everybody to agree to that, or there are other barriers to that.
So what suggestions or tips do you have for communities looking to run a Solarize campaign on their own?
I would say go ahead and try it. And there are people who are interested in adopting solar or other clean energy technologies, and they want a little guidance. They want some help with that, and providing that sort of framework is definitely worthwhile. One of the things I would be prepared to do is to have more options for people who are not homeowners, because all of the things that we were offering people required you to own the roof, and that wasn't always the case for people. So even though people wanted to make some changes to contribute to reducing fossil fuels and things like that, it would be better if there was also another component of it that wrapped in some other opportunities for people who don't own homes.
Thank you so much, Mary.
Yeah, you're welcome.